free. Where no one should go hungry, we need heroes like Gabriel to help keep America fed. CDLA driving professionals. Join Oakley Transport today. Keep America fed. Visit oakleytransport.com or call them today at 1-877-8-TANKER. That's 1-877-8-TANKER. From the heart of Central Florida, you're listening to the most electrifying show in media, A Neighbor's Choice. And I'm your host, David Gronowski. So glad to be with you once again. And it's a beautiful day here in the Sunshine State. I hope you're doing well wherever you are. And always remember, you can go to our website, aneighborschoice.com. That's aneighborschoice.com. If you want to catch an article or an episode that you may have missed, or many of our online-only podcasts are also found on aneighborschoice.com, where you can see interviews with some of the biggest newsmakers of various fields, Scott Adams from Dilbert, Diamond and Silk, Ron Paul, all kinds of folks, and even folks in the field of theology, Bishop N.T. Wright or David Bentley Hart, all kinds of different categories of knowledge, because we're rooted in the principle of challenging toxic groupthink in every field of our lives where it counts. And that's what we use as our principle that unites all the different guests that we have on. And I saw this headline that I wanted to comment on, and I think it pertains to our life that we're going through right now with this rocky economic situation. It's in Reuters. It says China may dump U.S. treasuries as tensions flare. This is in the Global Times. This is China may gradually cut its holdings of U.S. Treasury bonds and notes in light of rising tensions between Beijing and Washington, state-backed newspaper Global Times cited experts as saying. With Sino-U.S. relations deteriorating over various issues, including coronavirus, trade and technology, global financial markets are increasingly worried if China would sell the U.S. government debt it holds as a weapon to counter rising U.S. pressure. China will gradually decrease its holdings of U.S. debt to about $800 billion under normal circumstances. Ji Zhuang, a professor at the Shanghai University of Finance and Economics, was quoted as saying on Thursday. But of course, China might sell all of its U.S. bonds in an extreme case, like a military conflict. China, the second largest non-U.S. holder of treasuries, held $1.074 trillion in June, down from $1.083 trillion in the previous month, according to the latest official data. And, the different economists that I've listened to over the years have always said that that would be a big challenge to the ability for the dollar to maintain its staving off of inflation. And we've already heard Fed Chairman Powell indicate that the usual 2% inflation mark that the Fed aims for may be a little not quite exactly what we'll be having year to year. And so you have that combined with China threatening to sell off or some of its bonds, and that's a kind of a scary picture for those who are kind of hoping that the dollar will just maintain its status quo of being able to be the world reserve currency and print trillions of dollars with no inflation here at home. We haven't had to deal with that kind of problem or fear of significant increase in inflation for some time, but that may be something on the horizon if this comes to play. Because one of the things that I'm concerned about is, you have Joe Biden. He was saying recently this week that he's not going to have to raise your taxes one penny, to pay for his programs. That's what he was saying. And I was thinking, yeah, well, even if that's the case, you're still going to raise it by the hidden tax of inflation, of printing money, and then it goes into the sectors of the economy that government is meddling with most. And so if it's housing or healthcare or college debt, that's where the pricing is going to go up and cost is going to go up the most. That's where inflation, it moves not in an even distribution, but it moves into areas of concentration where government presence is most involved, usually for political reasons, right? And so that is always a scary thing. But when you have people saying, hey, we may not be, buying treasury bonds anymore, we might start selling them off. That could be a market signal that makes other people do likewise. And that could be a tumultuous time for us if we're focused on, putting all of our wealth in a dollar. I think that we have to be very nimble in these times, stay out of debt, stay away from consumer debt, stay out of, overspending. Just try to stay out of the credit system altogether so that you're nimble and, live beneath your means so that you don't have to live in such a haphazard way if you have such volatile economic choices. All these situations that we're having, they're a result of our country being way too decadent in its belief that it can print its money to prosperity. You cannot print your way to prosperity. You cannot create money out of nothing. As we've had various guests on our program elucidate, you have to have wealth generated through voluntary exchange, creating innovations, making our life and productivity easier so that we can allocate our time and resources to other things. If you don't have to have a horse and buggy, you can get to California from Florida a lot faster by plane, and therefore you free up your time and resources to do other things besides, riding a horse and buggy all across the United States. And the same thing goes for anything that you innovate in the market. It creates a win-win scenario that gives everybody real wealth because time is money. Your labor is your, that's why it's so awful that we have almost half of our income taken by taxes and inflation in one form or another in this country, because your time and your labor, that's your time on earth. And that's a precious resource. That's what we have. That's all we have. We don't, you don't get to pause your time. You have to be able to have a reasonable ability to keep the fruit of your labor and to be able to store it in a medium of exchange which cannot be tampered with for political purposes. And I believe that means we need to have honest money. We need to have money that's backed by something so it can't be printed out of thin air. And we can't have politics. We need to have separation of money and state. We have to have separation of money and state. Otherwise, we're not going to have a society much longer that's going to be based on any real wealth. Without having a separation of our money and our medium of exchange that we're going to use to build wealth together, we're not going to have the ability to plan for the future. We're going to have an economy that's based on spending, creating money out of thin air, trillions of dollars, to the point where we're going to fall off of a cliff with inflation. So I'm very concerned about this news. Of course, it could be just China bluffing. But the point is, I think we're a lot closer to the point where China is going to want to get rid of their bonds than we were a few years ago. And some folks say that's a good thing. We need to have a trade war with China. We need to make things here. But at the end of the day, at this point, when our economy has been built so much on our ability to print money out of thin air and then export the effects of inflation abroad, we're asking for trouble if we want to start a trade war and have people sell off their bonds and then not expect to have perhaps runaway inflation catch up to us here at home. So it's just common sense. We have to allow for people to have a medium of exchange that has long-term value, that can actually increase in its value over the years relative to the goods that are available for people to purchase. You have to be able to have a medium of exchange that allows accumulation of wealth by even saving alone. Today, you can't really accumulate wealth by saving. You have to go gamble it away in the stock market, like a casino. in order to have an opportunity to have a retirement and so forth. Because again, we don't have an honest money system. We have a centrally planned money system. And then kids in the universities and high school are taught that, no, we have too much capitalism. We don't have too much capitalism. We have too much central planning, too much, the central banks are a plank of the Communist Manifesto. We have too much of that. Too much central planning, too much Communist Manifesto, and not enough free markets and respect for individual personhood. So that's why we're in the mess we're in today. And this headline about China is concerning to me. We'll continue live on A Neighbor's Choice. I'm David Granosky. You can call in at 727-587-1040. That's 727-587-1040. We'll be back on FM and AM and around the world online in just a moment.
This portion of the upcoming amazing broadcast is brought to you by the law firm of Catania & Catania, award-winning personal injury, auto, and motorcycle accident attorneys, serving Tampa Bay families for over 28 years.
Not ready to go to your favorite seafood restaurant? Get the highest quality fish for less, delivered straight to your door by Fast Fresh Seafood. Order our fresh hot snapper, grouper, mahi, and more. They're boneless, skinless, flash frozen the same day, and individually vacuum wrapped. Pick the size filet you want, the amount you want, and checkout's easy at fastfreshseafood.com. The best thing, every fish is on sale. Fastfreshseafood.com. Caught fresh for you, delivered straight to you. Stay home and stay safe.
Need a trusted hand sanitizer made in the USA? Physicians Group Hand Sanitizer reduces bacteria that can cause disease. Our liquid sanitizer is made of 75% ethanol alcohol. Our gel sanitizer is 70%. Neither requires soap or water. Simply cover all surfaces of your hands, then rub them together until dry. Our hand sanitizer comes in 2 to 16-ounce bottles and gallon jugs. Order now at easyhandsanitizer.com and receive 10% off all orders over $100. That's easyhandsanitizer.com.
I'm attorney Young Kim. The financial problems caused by the coronavirus nightmare are not going away anytime soon. If you are behind on your credit card or mortgage payments, or bill collectors are harassing you, there are ways to get them off your back and legally wipe the slate clean. Call Consumer Law Attorneys at 888-99-FRESH for a free consultation. Learn how we can stop the bank and collection companies and help people in debt get a fresh start. Call 888-99-FRESH, 37374. Main office, St. Petersburg.
Baseball is back, and as always, the name of the game in baseball is to go home and be safe. Well, nobody protects all the pieces of your life like Italiano Insurance. Whether it's your home, car, life, disability, long-term care, Italiano keeps you safe. We can never predict what's going to happen in a baseball game, and we can never predict what's going to happen in life. So call the trusted agents at Italiano and make sure you're covered. Welcome back, Rays and baseball. Call Italiano at 813-877-7799 or go to ItalianoInsurance.com.
A bright future starts with a healthy lifestyle.
Pinocchio, I'm a real boy.
And the Food Pyramid will help you find the right balance of everything you and your child need. To learn more, visit mypyramid.gov. This message brought to you by the U.S. Department of Agriculture and the Ad Council.
Our monetary system is failing. Negative interest rates, growing debt, highly speculative market, and the dollar is being devalued by the Fed. Investing your wealth has never been more challenging. Who wants to earn just 1% interest annually in a savings account? There is another option. Monetary metals. They pay interest on gold in gold with no storage costs ever. Visit interestongold.com/David. That's interestongold.com/David. A lot of people are trying to, especially in the Trump campaign, the Republican Party, trying to brand and understand Kamala Harris, what kind of politician she would be, what kind of a figure would she be ideologically. And there's I think most of them are getting it wrong, as the Republican Party typically does. But there was a good article, there is a good article up on Mises.org by Patrick Newman, who we've had on the program in the past. He's very good about history and understanding what's going on, of the history of economics. And he's got a story out called, Is Kamala Harris a 21st Century Woodrow Wilson? So just want to share this with you. He says progressivism, a code word for cronyism, presents a serious threat to America. As Murray Rothbard explains, the original progressive era witnessed corporate and safety regulations, environmental laws, welfare and labor compensation, and new taxes that benefited favored corporations, bureaucrats, academics, and labor activists at the expense of the taxpayer. If trends continue, modern politicians will pass similar policies to benefit themselves and favored supporters, crippling economic activity. To properly understand this progressivist threat, one must recognize the motives, background, and ideological orientation of the original progressives. They were mostly Yankees, the descendants of the Puritans who stayed in New England or immigrated to New York and the Midwest. They grew up in evangelical households that urged a remaking of society by coercively stamping out sin, particularly alcohol consumption. After earning PhDs in Germany, progressives preached their interventionism under the secularized guise of science and the public welfare. Furthermore, these social engineers supported eugenics, the science of controlling the labor supply to improve its overall quality. Lastly, progressives strove to revolutionize the world through foreign policy adventures. In their struggle for economic privileges, progressives split into two groups. The corporatists championed protecting trusts and cartels from the free market. These big business advocates wanted to create trade commissions and other regulatory agencies to cripple competition and impose onerous compliance costs on small businesses. On the other hand, the socialists desired an overhaul of the capitalist system, blaring the trumpets for stringent antitrust regulation, radical labor laws, and redistributive taxes. President Woodrow Wilson embodied both strands, working with the two groups to enact the income tax, the Federal Reserve System, and the Federal Trade Commission. In many ways, modern progressives are carbon copies. They congregate in New England and live in coastal New York City, Washington, D.C., San Francisco, and Los Angeles. While eschewing traditional religion, modern progressives are zealots for egalitarianism and social justice. They attend the Ivy League and other elite American universities, empowering them with government-funded research. Although modern progressives disregard eugenics, they still advocate social engineering, championing egalitarianism for everybody except themselves while dictating what is morally acceptable. Finally, they are thoroughgoing foreign interventionists. Neoconservatism is actually a variant of progressivism. For, as Angelo Codevilla explains, George W. Bush's wars were, quote, but an extrapolation of the sentiments of America's progressive class, first articulated by people such as Princeton's Woodrow Wilson. And how many folks in the Republican Party, the base, the so-called conservatives, voted for Bush with fervent passion. See, this problem that we're in culturally, politically, economically, didn't happen overnight, my friends. Let's not have a short memory here. Let's continue with this Patrick Newman article on Mises.org. It's very good. The progressive movement still splits along corporatist and socialist lines. Now, you notice I coined the term corporate communist. Maybe somebody else used it before me. I've never seen it. Corporate communist is what I use to describe this new fusionism, and I think it's very close to what Patrick Newman is describing here about Kamala Harris. But the progressive movement splits along corporatist and socialist lines. The former support a cozy relationship with Wall Street and big tech, welcoming various internet and safety regulations that would hurt smaller businesses without the appropriate e-commerce infrastructure. The latter, the socialists, they advocate radically anti-capitalist measures, particularly the dismantling of big tech, the Green New Deal, a universal basic income, and wealth taxes. With the exception of hostile antitrust lawsuits, big business corporatists are not against these measures per se, provided they can acquire environmental subsidies and offload the cost of new entitlements and taxes onto the less wealthy, accomplished with the progressivist income tax and Social Security. If Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden embody the corporatist mindset, and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Elizabeth the socialist mindset, then surely Kamala Harris is the modern Wilsonian. Big Tech has funded Harris in various California elections in exchange for favorable regulatory oversight. Many former personnel now work for the large companies. A senior counsel left in 2018 to lobby on behalf of Amazon. Harris's first campaign manager works for Google, and her brother-in-law is the chief legal officer for Uber. To pander to the socialists, Harris supports the profligate Green New Deal and a universal basic income funded by new taxes that will only be levied on the wealthy, supposedly. Harris exerts enormous influence over the extremely malleable and increasingly senile Biden, jubilantly telling Trevor Noah on The Daily Show that, quote, as soon as we get him in the White House, and even before with these task forces that we had, we were able to significantly push Joe Biden to do things that he hadn't signed on to before. Clearly, Harris plans to run the show. Similar to the legislation of 100 years ago, the new progressive juggernaut presents an incredible threat to the United States. Its policies will impoverish the public to enrich elite businesses, politicians, intellectuals, and unions. The future looks bleak, and it must be stopped. So this is a very succinct and I think accurate article by Patrick Newman, who's a professor at Florida State College here, if you live in the Sunshine State listening on radio, or, and I think this is a great summation of kind of what I've been saying is this new corporate communist blend where you've got corporatism, but then you've got communist scraps, and you've got some people who are a little bit more corporatist, and then you've got some on the left that are more into communism and destroying everything that's built wealth for the most vulnerable. And so you have this merger between these giant corporations who are saying, okay, we can play with this stuff. This is good. We can shift the burden of all these new regulations and policies onto our competition and onto those who do not have an organized voice in the powers of government. And, I hate to say it to you, but both parties are lockstep on this corporatism. And because communism has become more powerful, corporate communism is now becoming the more dominant strain. It used to be good old-fashioned corporatism that both parties really emphasized. And they would always throw a few little communist scraps. But now the communist part of corporate communism has now taken on a bigger part of the story. And it's not gonna be something that you defeat by just saying, oh, we gotta defend the status quo against socialism. That's not gonna work. Unfortunately, so much of the conservatives and folks that you see on the right, that's all they do. They kind of basically just defend the status quo. Oh, that's too costly. That's not going to win. You have to paint a vision of the future that appeals to people in the gut, something at the visceral level that they say, I want to be a part of this mission. And saying, well, we're happy with the status quo, as crooked and as rigged as it is by government regulation, people don't buy it. They want a positive. That is, you're proposing a place to go, right? We're moving you towards this direction. They want that kind of positive vision for the future for them to get on board with culturally. And just saying, oh, we're happy with the status quo, let's stop this socialism. That's not going to work. You have to have an alternative that's a forward-thinking, proactive picture for people to move towards. And that's what we're trying to build and cultivate on this program. That's why we have a lot of folks in the field of medicine and nutrition and science come on to help us paint that picture for what a society looks like when it challenges toxic groupthink and it has the courage to think for ourselves and to create amazing innovations that can benefit everybody, no matter who they are or where they came from. We'll be back live on A Neighbor's Choice. Stay tuned.
Don't you feel like you've wasted your whole summer?
The summer of 2020 will be one to remember. Or maybe not so much.
Labor Day weekend!
This Labor Day weekend, News Talk 1040 WHBO salutes the American workforce. And like us, all those who deserve a few days off.
Happy Labor Day weekend!
Gather friends and family, fire up the barbecue, and don't forget your mask. Happy Labor Day from News Talk 1040 WHBO. Hey, hold my beer.
Jacob Blake, the man shot in the back 7 times by a police officer in Kenosha, Wisconsin, and is now paralyzed in a hospital, appearing in court via video concerning domestic abuse charges filed before the police shooting.
Do you understand everything I've just explained to you, questioned you about, or discussed with you so far?
Yes.
All right. Do you have any questions for me, Mr. Blake?
Not at the moment. No, I don't.
A lawyer for Blake, Patrick Cafferty, entering pleas of not guilty. Bail is $10,000. A big halt by the commander-in-chief. The Pentagon's plan to shut down the military's independent newspaper, Stars and Stripes, will not happen, says President Trump. It's Congress's call. Early voting is now officially underway, with North Carolina sending out the first mail-in ballots to voters. Despite a better-than-expected jobs report for August, Wall Street's closed out its biggest negative week in more than 2 months. The Dow down 159 points. The S&P fell 28. The Nasdaq lost 145 points. Chuck Sievertson, ABC News.
Hello, David Gornosky here. Thank you for joining me. If you're joining by radio live right now, or maybe you're listening to our podcast or our website at neighborschoice.com. Happy to have you there and joining this time to just step back and paint a vision of the future with me. So we see that there's really a simple kind of picture to look at. Right now, you're seeing all kinds of excuses for people to be ugly and hateful and mean and vicious towards one another, to treat people in a bad way because of their skin color or their political ideology. The media has been shepherding and fomenting this very, very effectively, and it's pretty bad. The media, in my understanding, is just the continuation of ancient priestly scribal classes that would mythologize events of the world in order to protect the reigning gods and religion and order of the community. And so that's what so much of the media acts as. They act as mediators, just like priests were mediators between the gods and the people. The media act like the mediators between the gods of our ideologies and our state apparatus and the people, right? But they use that in a way to justify and perpetuate the status quo of ideologies, the status quo of the violence that we see done on behalf of the people by politicians who create all these grandiose mythologies that we can save you from your problems. Just worship us. Just give us your allegiance. Just give us your obedience, and we'll solve things for you. And that's the old song that's always been dazzling people for thousands of years. And we have, just like every generation, the opportunity to resist that temptation, and it will flee. And so what's the positive vision? How do we look at where we're at? Because we can analyze, if you want to hear programs analyze every little incident about this person was shot and look at their history and look at this and try to make everything about personalities. There's a billion programs that will talk to you all day long about he said, she said, about personalities. But if you want to know what the real mechanism driving this, it's the fact that we haven't had real innovation in the world of physical stuff for decades. I mean, real great innovations. And we've lost the ability to believe that there's much left to innovate. in the world of physical stuff. And physical stuff includes our bodies, right? We don't believe anymore in our ability to create just come up with an idea, right? Anti-gravity, where you can repel, right, and levitate instead of having to use wheels, right? Or propulsion. Is that possible? You know, current physics says no, but because we don't allow ourselves to have a dreamer-friendly society that is allowed to have a more free flow of capital towards ideas that might have basis in taking off, we don't have that kind of spirit of looking for those questions, to challenge those things that are said to be impossible, right? Or how about, you know, again, I go back to it all the time, but I think one of the big driving forces for people having such hatred is our lack of innovation in the world of medicine. When everybody's worried about their loved ones having a chronic illness, right? Or now this new virus, it's all tied together. This new virus is more lethal with people who are having these comorbidities of chronic illness, right? So if you solve the chronic illnesses, then you can solve the likelihood of having a fatal encounter with a novel virus like what we're dealing with. And so there's a lot of folks who are really stressed out and really anxious and really at their wits' end in fear of illnesses of various types. And so that fear and that anger and that angst and that sorrow gets all stirred together, and it channels itself into political aggression against other people. Hatred on social media, hatred in the media, lying and manipulation of facts, aggression in the streets where people's cities are burning. And this is a manifestation, I believe, of a lot of it has to do with a lack of innovation in the world of medicine, because it's so tightly regulated and controlled by outdated paradigms of knowledge that need to have disruption. Not disruption for disruption's sake, but disruption because they don't work. One of the clearest examples of that I point to all the time, and it's so important, is that so much of the chronic illnesses that we think are genetically driven are actually metabolically driven. And they're actually based in the mitochondria of our cells. And that's the future of medicine. Watch. Go watch this episode 5 years from now, 10 years, and tell me how it panned out. You'll see. The mitochondrial frame of medicine is going to be the future of medicine. And it requires solutions that are not that expensive oftentimes. That if you have a mitochondrial focus, but see, when you have corporatists that can rig the market to protect their style of solving problems, they have no ability, we have no ability to have the proper funding to find out how much promise something like mitochondrial-based medicine paradigms could be for things like cancer and so forth. And the same thing goes for mental health. How many folks right now are struggling with mental health because of the awful brokenness and isolation that's been caused by the lockdown politics? And how much of that could be remedied if people understood what Dr. Chris Palmer's doing at Harvard as a medical psychiatrist using therapeutic ketosis to help people with depression and bipolar and schizophrenia. Now, what I'm showing you is that we have this pressure cooker, zero-sum world where there's no growth in wealth, right? Because wealth is things like your health. If you don't have to worry about, diabetes and heart disease and cancer and mental disorders, if you don't have to worry about that, if millions of people can be free from the fear of those things and the affliction of those things, then what does that do for the psychological wealth, the cultural wealth, and the vitality wealth that our culture would have? It would open up so much healing opportunity. It would open up an opportunity to have less tension between people, and they would have less of a reason to join some kind of collectivist tribal group and start attacking other people who are different from them. Do you see how this works, folks? So I can try to play the game and just tell you it's all about this team or that team. That's what most people who do punditry do. This is why this is not a pundit program. This is a program that's on a mission to get information out to the public, to allow people to have the power to revolutionize things in a peaceful and nonviolent way. As long as we stay glued to looking towards politicians and electing them to solve these problems, we'll continue to buy into the idea that we have this stagnant, non-growing wealth. And the only thing we can do is divvy up the wealth in different pieces. That's the whole premise of our political solution. The whole premise of why socialism and all these vulture ideologies are rising is because we have lost faith in our ability as Americans and as human beings, more importantly, to solve problems. We've lost faith in the ability to have the courage to say, I'm sorry, you guys are smart in your establishment science, but you're dead wrong, and we're going to show it, and we're going to innovate our way to show you why you're wrong. We've lost faith in that, and therefore we've allowed politics to dominate the conversation way too much. And I'm suggesting that we flip the emphasis, that we should have news programs, which is what I'm doing right now, that instead of always just telling you what Joe Biden said, which is always going to be clownish, instead of telling you, oh, they're printing this many trillion versus that many trillion of dollars that we don't have, what's that going to do for you? If I tell you that every day and I leave you there, then all I've done is left you in a place of despondency that nothing is going to get better. And what does that do? That acts like a kind of spell, right? It's not just my program, but if I said a negative thing like that all the time and just left you with this half-truth of just saying, well, things are bad, things are bad, things are bad, vote for this team, maybe it won't be so bad. If I left you there, and that's the way I use this media platform, then I would be, first of all, not telling the truth. And second of all, I would be doing a disservice as a news person because I'm not sharing with you the good news that's out there, that there are these revolutionary opportunities to revolutionize medicine and energy. And I keep pointing those two things out because those are the two sticking points that we can really create a tremendous amount of wealth and positive win-win opportunities with. And it's those two areas. What does the state promise the public? The state continues to promise the public, we can save you from the planet being destroyed by climate change, when we can save you from the dependency on fossil fuels, we can save you on the destruction of your entire ecosystem with pollution, but you have to surrender tremendous amounts of power to us more. And then the other thing they use to scare people into worshiping them is saying, look, medicine's so expensive. The medicine that they do, right? Their medicine is always patent-based medicine. That's why it's so expensive. They preclude, because of their FDA standards, they preclude anything that's generic or natural from having proper funding because they only patented medicine can afford the $1 billion price tag that they put on what could be called medicine with the FDA approval process. So they say, so the other promise is government says, hey, come and worship us. I know you're scared because the medicine is very expensive without insurance, and insurance can be spotty and hit or miss. So therefore, we're going to control it completely. We'll still have our corporate allies that'll make their money, but we're going to consolidate it and control it as much as possible. And therefore, you'll be taken care of if you just surrender to us. And so what our positive future message in response to that is no, freedom, respect for human personhood, and the courage to challenge toxic, outdated ideas about medicine. That's the positive solution. That's where the David versus Goliath thing happens, where the slingshot of an innovator like a Galileo or a Tesla in our time, and they're out there, we've had them on the program, they are allowed to, with their slingshot of truth, break down the Goliath of a bad idea for how to treat the human body. Now, see the two things I've just described to you, pollution and energy. Government says, worship us and we'll keep you from having the earth be melt down from climate change. And the second thing is, worship us and we'll take care of your health care because you can't afford it without us. You can't afford it without us. And so that's what I'm trying to get you to see, folks, is that if you see the bigger picture of what we can do outside of politics, then we can have a positive alternative vision than the myopic, negative, circular scapegoat hunt that is politics. The news media, they're going to say, oh, that's neat to talk about innovation, but really what really changes the world is political power. That's what they always get you focused on. Who's got the political power? Now, how is that a Christian place to think? How is that a Christian way? Jesus said, my power is made perfect in weakness. So how can we say we're going to be imitating Jesus and then buy into this idea, left or right, that it's all about getting the power to solve problems? No. It's in the weakness of a Galileo toiling away right now in a lab by himself with no political, power, no social status, very little friends and social currency. but he's working on an idea or she's working on an idea that's going to revolutionize medicine or energy and some of the other sectors that affect our lives most. And it's that kind of, power made perfect in weakness that we need to cultivate using our voices, because we are the media that can shepherd this information into becoming a reality by giving people who are doing the Galileo type work in medicine and energy a platform to articulate their research, to articulate their scientific evidence, and to articulate the things they need to be able to take their research and turn it into products and technology that we can use in our everyday life and have tremendous wealth as a result. So what we have, folks, is this escalating race between the forces of decivilization, which is in the form of politics, printing our way. We'll print money for you. We'll give you money, and you'll be able to police the world forever. We'll be able to come up with every program forever. We'll promise you everything. That's the evil way. That's the wicked way. That's the obsession with power. That's the opposite way of Jesus, which is humbleness, humility, making stuff, building stuff, serving your neighbor. And I know some of you listening right now are saying, well, man, solving medicine and energy, that's too big for me, But you can celebrate and share the voices. I mean, I'll give you an example right now. Michael Lasanti using Z-Pak to take on cancer stem cells. Go look into his work, and if you agree with what he's doing, share his information. Or Dr. Thomas Seyfried at Boston College using therapeutic ketosis to fight off late-stage cancers in people. He's a biologist doing incredible work. Share his videos, share his content. That's just 2 examples. There's many more examples we could get into. In the energy field, there's a lot of great voices out there working on stuff with little to no funding, and they're doing great work. They just need to have our attention, our encouragement, giving them the resources of people and money they need to get their stuff. And it's not a lot of money, it just takes a lot of courage. We'll be back in just a moment on A Neighbor's Choice. David Gronowski here. Let me tell you about a man named Gabriel. Every day, Gabriel puts on his boots and drives across America to make sure our store shelves stay stocked with the food people count on. See, Gabriel served our country overseas. He knows that America stands for freedom, quality, and caring for others the way we would like to be treated. That's why when Gabriel saw food shelves getting low during the pandemic, he hit the road as a driver with Oakley Transport. In the land of the free, where no one should go hungry, we need heroes like Gabriel to help keep America fed. CDLA driving professionals. Join Oakley Transport today. Keep America fed. Visit oakleytransport.com or call them today at 1-877-8-TANKER. That's 1-877-8-TANKER.
A lawsuit is not something that anyone looks forward to. It's a stressful process. There are attorneys in Tampa Bay that keep clients well informed, creating less stress. That law firm is Catania. Personal injury law is defended with full disclosure. There is no guessing game. If it's an auto accident, medical malpractice, nursing home negligence, unsafe working conditions, or motorcycle accidents, the law firm of Catania will handle the process worry-free from start to finish. Many victims don't realize they have a claim for the loss until they talk to Catania. They only represent private individuals and treat every case as if it's going to trial. Putting families first is more than just a slogan. It's their way of practicing law. It's a commitment to you. Remember, they don't get paid if you don't get paid. So go to Catania.com. Over 28 years in practice. Catania, personal injury, auto, and motorcycle accident attorneys. Catania, putting families first.
Office Tampa. Not attorney spokeswoman.
Do not stop taking a prescribed medication without first consulting your doctor. Discontinuing without your doctor's advice can result in injury or death.
Attention Zantac users. The FDA requested that manufacturers pull Zantac and products containing ranitidine off the market, noting exposure to unacceptable levels of a cancer-causing agent. If you or a loved one was diagnosed with cancer after regular use of Zantac or ranitidine products, you may be entitled to financial compensation. Call Action Legal Group now for a free consultation. Call 866-321-1729. That's 866-321-1729.
Our monetary system is failing. Negative interest rates, growing debt, highly speculative market, and the dollar is being devalued by the Fed. Investing your wealth has never been more challenging. Who wants to earn just 1% interest annually in a savings account? There is another option. Monetary Metals. They pay interest on gold in gold, with no storage costs ever. Visit interestongold.com/David. That's interestongold.com/David. A Neighbor's Choice returns. So the question is, are we going to settle for the lie of politics? That's what all the folks want you bedazzled by. What did this person do? Oh, he's a jerk. Oh, he's a bad guy. Oh, this one's a villain. Oh, this one's terrible. This one's going to destroy us all. And that's all we do. And here I am over here saying, you know why your life isn't going exactly the way you want it to go? It's because we don't believe in the ability for us to solve problems in dramatic ways using our God-given freedom. Somebody named Jesse says it's boring. Energy is boring. Cures for cancer is boring. That's a shrunken mind. Someone online said that. A shrunken mind that doesn't understand that the whole reason why we're here is to try to develop positive solutions to make all of our lives better. What's boring is hearing people like Joe Biden and Donald Trump talk about how they're going to save us from ourselves when we know good and well that no person in government can act as a god to save us from the problems that we have. That the only way to have solutions come to pass is for us to roll up our sleeves and to challenge these assumptions that we've had baked into our establishment, science, and medicine. So many people believe that it's already been established for settled science that cancer, for example, can be handled only at a genetic level. It's a genetic disease, and therefore the paradigm of medicine is always going to be around expensive, patentable solutions. And then someone comes along named Dr. Michael P. Lisanti, one of the most cited scholars, according to Google Scholar, dead or alive. I've had him on the program. And he gives this amazing evidence that actually you can have real effects against cancer stem cells, which are the root of cancer metastasis, using generic antibiotics like doxycycline and azithromycin. Now, the politically enclosed medical industry doesn't know how to take information like that because the entire pipeline of something becoming a drug is predicated on the political hurdle of being able to afford the FDA's $1 billion price tag, which naturally is going to preclude generic drugs. Because which organizations are going to say, okay, we've each got patentable medicine right now that's patented, patent pending or whatever, that makes us a massive amount of money that we can recoup the cost for our shareholders and so forth. But there's this evidence that this generic antibiotic, well, hey, we could get X, Y, and Z corporations all together and we'll go in on this together as an act of charity for mankind. Now, why would they do that? Why would they do that? I mean, that's the only way. How else could you afford to spend the $1 billion price tag using to test whether a generic like a Z-Pak or a doxycycline could be effective against a cancer? Do you see how it's not, they want to use this blanket, oh, we stand for science. But that's not science. That's politics. That's politics, my friend. There's nothing in the scientific method that says first make people cough up $1 billion to be able to have an opportunity to test something to see whether it's efficacious for a disease. That's an arbitrary political standard that biases all of the medical research dollars to flow in the direction of things that can be patented. Things that can be patented. So that naturally, when Dr. Lisanti and others demonstrate things like therapeutic ketosis, things like azithromycin, both of which you can't patent a diet and you can't patent a generic antibiotic, where is the monetary incentive to be able to have the opportunity to see just how effective these possible things could be? My chief science advisor, Dr. Yu, is a physicist, but he understood how to question some of the founding myths of establishment physics such that he could hypothesize, having a better understanding of the atom, that it's a dipolar magnetic particle, not monocharged particles of protons, electrons, and neutrons. I know that's a bold claim, but he's an example of the kind of Galileos that I'm talking about. But for someone like him, he can challenge the physics establishment with a more unified and simpler explanation, which would make Occam's razor lean toward his explanation, all things being equal elsewhere. And he has a unified and different model of the atom, which then allows him to make a prediction about what might be effective for cancer. He's not a physician, but he just understands the physics of what's going on with atoms in our body and how an antibiotic might be functioning against a tumor. And he hypothesized before we even knew of Dr. Lisanti's work that antibiotics could be extremely promising for cancer. That's just a hypothesis that he made as a physicist, not a physician. So he's not a medical expert, not making medical expert claims. He's making physics explanations of how the different particles in our body interact, especially an antibiotic in relationship to a tumor. And so because he thinks outside the box, he's able to see and predict things that then we can validate by then finding independent confirmation with Dr. Lisanti's work and others, where they're using doxycycline and azithromycin in clinical trials with humans with breast cancer and finding it to be extremely effective at eliminating cancer stem cells, which is huge. That is tremendous. That is good news. What's boring is thinking about what Joe Biden's going to say today or tweet today. Nobody cares. That's the silly people's news. The adults are going to continue to do the good news of finding things like an antibiotic for cancer. Do you know how much suffering could be reduced in the world if that promising thing could be developed, researched, and properly tested and then given to the public? That would be an earth-shattering revolution for people. How many people's lives would be more happier? How many people's well-being would be better? How many people's friendships would be restored? How many people would have a better life overall without the fear of cancer terrorizing them? See, that's what people who care about their neighbor focus on. They focus on, okay, what are the problems that are hurting our neighbors? And myself, my family, and everybody, how can we stop these problems? How can we battle against these problems instead of battling against ourselves? Because when we battle against those politicians, at the end of the day, we're just shadow boxing at ourselves, aren't we? We're just looking in the mirror and flailing around, scapegoating people, projecting things onto them as avatars for things we don't like about ourselves. So that's what we have to focus on, folks. It's really simple. I've just spent this time showing you how we have a positive alternative to the future. It doesn't have to be this dystopian, zero-sum, tear-down political world. We don't have to play a part in that. I know there's a lot of folks on left and right that just tell you the only thing you have to do is to play a side, scapegoat the other side, just start demonizing everybody else, and that's your only hope. That is a fake news. It's a lie, and there is so much good news that we're going to continue to break and shape on this program. Have a great weekend. I'm David Gornowski. Email me hello@aneighborschoice.com. Godspeed.